Financial statements in Power BI. Kind of tricky which approach to take because there's not just one approach to building a financial statement. Now in this video I'm going to show you one approach that is very flexible and quite easy to set up. Let's get started. Welcome to How to Power BI. My name is Bas, and if this is the very first time for you visiting this channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on all of my videos and we just share everything I know about Power BI. Now let's talk about financial statements. Why are they so tricky to create in Power BI? Well, basically it comes down to the following three reasons. First of all, the structure of the financial statement often needs to be completely custom. Second, you need to bring in the values of all the different line items, which often also are interdependent. So that means we need to have calculations between the different rows. Now, the third reason is that the values inside of the financial statement often need to be formatted in different ways. For example, percentages versus absolute values. And in Power BI, there's not just one approach that everybody takes. There are many different approaches that you can take for creating a financial statement. Now, the approach that I'm going to show you is quite flexible and not too difficult to set up. And even if you're not so much into finance, still a valuable approach if you're looking for a totally customized table with a customized structure. Now for this approach, we are not going to start in Power BI, but we're going to start off in Excel, where we build a template that contains all of the line items in the way it needs to look like in Power BI. Now over here, you see I give every line item a number. And then right next to it, we have the line item description as it needs to look like in Power BI. So that means I also included spaces right in front of certain line items. So I believe that normal spaces get deleted in Power BI. So instead of that, what you do is you go here to insert, and then we go to symbol, and then look for the no break space. So over here, character code 0080. Now that's the one that you can use, and that one will not get deleted by Power BI. And in the column right next to it, we have the line item ID, which is basically the same as the line item description. However, here I got rid of all of the spaces, which makes it a little bit easier later on when we do our calculations, so that we don't have to count the number of spaces inside of a line item description. Now these three are the main columns that you need. Now the other ones we will need a bit later. Now let's go to Power BI and import this table. Now here you see the data model where we have our financial statement structure. That's the template file. And right next to it, we have two other tables. Now first of all, we have the financials dataset, where we have all of the values for the period that we are analyzing. Now here it's not really important that you have just one table where you have the values per line item. It can also be that you have a sales table, a cost table that allows you to get to those values using measures. Now then we also have a custom date table that connects to our financials table. All right, so now we are ready to get started with the visuals. So I go here to the report view, and first we're going to build an income statement using a normal table visual. And later we're going to use the matrix, but let's start with the table first. Now from our template table, we can then take the line item description and add it to the table. Now you see, we have now all of the different lines, but it looks a bit weird. And that's because the sorting is wrong. Now to have the same sorting as we have in the Excel file, let's go here to the line item description field, then sort by column. And here we can sort by the line item number. And then we get an error. Okay, we cannot sort the line item description column by line item number. There cannot be more than one value in the line item number for the same value in the line item description. You see on row 7, 13, 18, and 21, we have blanks in the line item description. Now, basically the same values, and we want to sort them by different numbers. So that doesn't work. Now, a quick workaround is the following. You go here to transform data under the home tab. And then we go to the template table, and from the line item description, we want to filter out all of the nulls. Then you apply these changes, go back to your data model, and now we try again. So I select line item description, sort by column, and then line item number. You see now it lets me, and the line items have now the correct sorting order, but I do want to have these spaces back. So I go back to Power Query, and then here we can delete that last step, apply the changes, and you see we have our spaces back. All right, so the next thing is that we have to make it look a little bit prettier and add the values. Now, let's start with the first point, the formatting. So I go here to the formatting tab, and here we can go to the style presets, and then let's go for minimal or maybe none. Now then I also want to get rid of these grid lines. So I go over here to grid and put the width to 0 or the color to white. So now, of course, the important part, how can we get the correct values right next to each single line item? Now, first, we have to create the measures for each line item. So for example, the sales calculation for me looks as follows. Here I use the calculate function to calculate the sum of the value column. However, I don't want to have every single value. I want to have a filter on the line item ID, which needs to be sales. Now for you, this calculation might look a little bit different depending on how your data model is set up. Okay, but what is important is that this measure returns the corresponding value for a certain line item. Then we have also some measures that refer to other measures like the cost of goods sold, which adds up the labor, materials, and overhead costs. And all of these measures you can nicely organize using folders. If you go to the data model, then just select a certain measure, and then over here we have the display folder. All right, so now that we have all of these different measures, we need to add them to the visual. So let me try this for the sales. I add it to the table and we have the sales everywhere, but I only need to show it on that first line item, sales. Now for that, we're going to create a separate measure that basically pulls in the correct measure for each line item. Let's create a new measure and let's call this one financial value. Now here we're going to use the switch function. Now the switch function allows you to check the value of a certain expression and then say if this, then that, if this, then that. Now this is exactly what we need because we want to check what is the line item that we're on, and if it's sales, then I want to have the value from the measure sales. And if it's the cost of goods sold, then I want to have the value from the measure cost of goods sold, etc. Now, first of all, we need to know at what line item we are looking at, which we can do with the selected value function. Now over here, we can just refer to the column name, which is in our case, the line item ID. And now we can refer to the line item ID name. So for the first one, that's going to be the sales. And if it's the sales, then I want to return the measure for sales. All right, now let's first try this one and let's add this one to the table, and you see we have only the value for sales. Now where did all of these other items go? Well, if you want to get those back, you just go over here to the line item description and then say that you want to show items with no data. So we have a value, however, that value I want to show in millions. So to do that, we have to go back to the measure, and here we can use a format function. Just wrap the sales measure inside of a format function where the value is determined by the sales measure, and then we can also add the formatting string. Now for showing your values in millions, you can do the following: hashtag or pound symbol, and then comma, pound symbol, 0, and then 2 commas, and then .0. All right, so this is my formatting string. Then I close the format function, press enter, and there you go. We have our value in millions with 1 decimal. And now I just need to continue doing this for all of the different line items, or I can just clap my hands. You see all of my other line items are also there now. Now you see that the values are there. However, in my data set, the cost, the expenses that I have are not having a negative sign in my data set. So I need to find a different way to show a little minus sign in front of the cost of goods sold. Now to do that, we can have a look at that template file where I also added a column whether a line item is an expense or is an income. All right, so here a 1 if it's a positive value, a -1 if it's a negative value. Now how can we use that? Well, we have to go back to the measure and let's add here at the beginning a variable, and let's call this one positive negative equals, and then here you can use selected value, min or max. Now I go here for the max, and I want to have a look at that expense column. So this one over here, which will return then a 1 or -1. All right, now because we have variables, we also need a return statement later here at the end. So over here, we want to return the result. Now, how can we use that value that we have stored in positive negative? Well, we just need to multiply all of our line items with a 1 or -1. So I can do this row by row, or to save a little bit of time, a little trick, you can also select over here the closing bracket and comma, then Control-Shift-L, and then you see it selects all of them. And then we can just type in here whatever we want. So we want to have a closing bracket and multiply it with the name of the variable, which is positive negative, comma. All right, now that works for all of them. However, the last one I still have to do manually. So let's do that one as well. And of course here all the way at the top, that one I don't want. All right. Now that looks much better. However, let's make a few formatting changes to make it more readable. For example, here at the top, we have line item description. Now, if you don't want to show that, then we can just go here to values, double click to rename it, just put in space, enter, and you see it's gone. So then the next thing is that I want to highlight the totals, the subtotals that we have inside of this income statement. Now, here I would add another column to this template file and then just put a 1 for those line items that we want to highlight. So you see that would look like this, where we have just ones and zeros. And then under formatting, you can go to cell elements, background color, let's turn it on. And then we want to go for a rule-based one where we say, well, here we want to have the highlight and we want to have, well, this doesn't really matter. And we want to say if it is equal to 1, then we want to have light blue. And then we just have to repeat it for each single column, which is in this case the first one and the second one. Now, once that is done, then we can also get rid of that total that we have there at the bottom. So I go here to totals, and then we just turn that one off. And you see, we already have a basic structure. However, the values that we have here are total values for just one period. And actually in my data set, we have January 22 and we have February 22. And I would like to have a comparison between the current and previous period, because here we have totals. Now, what we could do is first of all, create a slicer. So I deselect the table, insert a slicer, and to the slicer, we can add over here the year and the month. And then let's select February 22. And you see we have the values for that selected month. But what if I want to have the previous month values right next to it in a separate column? Well, then we need to create a measure. Now, how could that measure look like? Well, here I already created it for you. Now, let's go over it one by one. Now, the first variable just retrieves the maximum date within the context. So if February is selected, just gets the last date within that month. And from that month, I want to have the month, but one period back. Now, this we can do with end of month function. And then for the second argument, we say that we want to have the end of month, the latest value from the previous month. And from that, we then extract the year and the month. Now, that gives us basically a period identifier for the previous period. Now, how can we use that within a calculate function? So you see, we want to calculate the financial value. Now, we first want to remove that filter on the selected month. So if I have February selected, well, I get rid of that filter, replace it with a new one, which is then the previous period year, previous period month. Now that gets us the value, and then I wrap this inside of the if function because I just want to check, is there a financial value? If not, then just don't show anything. Then we can also add this measure to the table and then just update the formatting so that it looks like this. And just to make sure that the end user can only select one period at a time, I would go here to the slicer settings, turn multi-select off, and single select, let's turn that one on. Now, this is already quite okay. However, often I need a little bit more flexibility. And this we can achieve by not going for a table visual, but for a matrix visual, where we can also place something on columns if we want to have a horizontal breakdown, which would be kind of nice if we could dynamically add columns for each period that we want to show in our financial report. So to improve this visual, we're going to switch to a matrix. So I'm going to select the visual, then matrix, and you see the conditional formatting disappears from the headers, because for a matrix visual, we cannot apply conditional formatting to the row headers, which is a little bit of a downside, but you will see soon that it's not such a big deal. Now I want to have a horizontal breakdown for the different periods, so I'm going to take here date hierarchy, put it on columns, and you see first we have the year, then we can go to the next level, and we get an error. Now let's have a look at the measure and see what the problem is. Now here, I think we just need to wrap it inside of an if function first to check if we have a value for that month. So we can say if, and then we can look at the sales. So let's take the sales and check if it's different from 0. And only then we have our switch statement here. Then we also need a closing bracket, and that fixed it. All right, so here we have at the next level quarter, but for my data set, I only have the first 2 months. So I'm going to take the quarter out, going to take the weekday out, and then we can expand down to the month level. Perfect, so that is working. However, here you see it shows year. Either I format that in white, or I can also rename year here. However, when it's a hierarchy, then it doesn't allow you to do that. So instead of that, I'm going to take the date hierarchy out again, and then separately I'm going to put in the year, the month, and then go to the next level. And now I can change year to just a space so that it doesn't show here in the top left corner. All right, now it still shows all of the months for which I don't have any values. Now, if you don't want that, then you can just go here to the month, and then here deselect show items with no data. And then all of the months for which we have no values, they disappear again. All right, now let's get rid of these totals. I don't want to show them, so I go here to format. And then here we can say that we don't want to have subtotals and we don't want to have the row subtotals. Then let's play around with the formatting a little bit. Let's make these columns just a little bit wider. And then also here we can go to column headers and then align the headers in the middle, make them bold. And whenever we get values for the new months, they would pop up over here. Now this is okay. However, the beauty of matrix visual is that we can go to the next level, for example, from the year to the quarter to the month. But this also would work on the rows. And at the moment, we just have the line item description. Now, if we go back to that template, now here you see I added 2 columns, level 1 item, so the highest level in the hierarchy, and then level 2 items. Now, you probably also want to have level 1 sort so that we can sort the level 1 items in a certain order. And the same thing you could do also for the level 2 items. Now back in our matrix visual, we're going to remove whatever we had there on rows, so the line items are gone. And now we are going to our template table, and from which we can take the level 1 item, add it on rows, and we are also going to add the level 2 items. Now then you go to the top of the table, drill on rows, and then expand down so that we see the level 2 items as well. Now you see the order of the level 1 items is still wrong. So I have to take here a level 1 item, go to sort by column, and then here we can choose the column level 1 sort so that we have them sorted in the way that we want. Now you see that doesn't look too good yet because for many level 1 items we have now 2 rows. So here we have to click on the minus signs to get rid of those so that we only keep 1 row. Now once that is done, you can go here to format, and then we go to the row headers, and now we want to get rid of these plus minus icons. And you also see the conditional formatting doesn't look so good anymore, so let's get rid of that and then reapply it later. So over here I select the visual, so here we can go to cell elements and then turn background color off. Now you see there's still one big problem, and that is for some items like cost of goods sold we have still 2 rows, and also here for operating expenses. Here we have a line, and a little bit lower there we have another line, and I want to get rid of those and then put the main values, well, on the line that they are supposed to be. Now first of all, why do these show? Because, well, the input template is still kind of structured in a way for that first visual, the table visual, and not really for the matrix. However, we don't really have to restructure the whole thing. What is important for you is to understand why this happens. You see here we have the level 1 item, and on the second row, and here we have the level 2 items where I also have the cost of goods sold. And for the matrix visual, I could just get rid of that and then just put in these subtotals myself. However, here we are going to keep them for the moment because we can also deal with that inside of a measure. Now, how can we do that? Well, we can just add another if condition here where we can check the scope that we had, so the level in the hierarchy that we had. And this we can do with a function that is called isInScope. What do we want to check for? Well, we want to check the level we are at. So we want to check if we're at the level 2 item. And if we are, we want to return only the level 2 items. Now here at the bottom, I have the level 1 items, which I'm going to take out. So let's copy those. And then I indent this a little bit. And then I paste all of the level 1 items below it. Now also here, these we need to wrap inside of a switch function. So here we can use another switch. Now, what is the expression in this case? We want to have the selected value of which column of the level 1 item column. And then we can close that switch function, the second one. We can close that new if function as well. And everything else stays as it was before. And now, what happened? Well, I only see my level 2 items. Where did my level 1 items go? We have to go to formatting, and under formatting here you see we have row subtotals, which we turned off before. We have to turn it on, and then we get all of the subtotals back again. So that's good. And because it's a matrix, we can make use of the expand down and drill up functionalities that you find here at the top of the visual. That means we can go up to the first level for the line items, and we can expand down again to the second level. Same as we did for the columns, where we have the year, the quarter, and the month. So now you probably also want to add a little bit of color so that we highlight all of these subtotals. Now to do that, we just go again to Format, and then over here we have Cell Elements, and there we have to select the financial value measure, background color. That's what we want. Let's open conditional formatting, and here the rule that we want to set up is based on the highlight column that you find in the template file, just like before, where we want to say that it needs to be equal to 1. And over here for the summarization, I would go for maximum, and here apply to values and total. Now just make sure that you don't go for a minimum. This is important because for, let's say, cost of goods sold, there you have multiple line items of level 2, and then for those rows we had a 0. And if you then take the minimum, it would return a 0, which is not what we want. We want to have that subtotal highlighted. All right, therefore maximum. All right, so the subtotals are highlighted. Now remember, it's a matrix, so we cannot apply it over here to the headers. A bit unfortunate. And the next thing that I want to do is add some further values to it. Maybe you want to take these absolute values and express it as a percentage of the sales. Now just write another measure, like this one over here. And you see, I'm just taking the financial value, that measure that we wrote together before. I have to multiply that by 1,000,000 because that measure, well, formats everything as millions. And the format function returns text. Well, we have to take that value and multiply it by 1,000,000 again. And we divide it then by the sales. Not perfect, everything is expressed as a percentage of the sales. Now the next thing that we need to do is, well, also apply some formatting, conditional formatting to this field. And over here for the values, maybe let's call the first one just the currency, so dollars. And over here, the second one there, I rename it to percentages. All right, so now it looks like this. And now it's just a matter of adding all of the value fields that you need. Maybe you want to calculate the difference from one period to the other and play around with the formatting just a bit more. So just as an example, you can also make it look like this one over here. And what if at some point you need an extra line in your financial statement? Not a problem. The only thing that you need to do is go back to your template, add the extra line, then create a measure for the value that you want for the line, and then integrate it inside of this financial value measure. And that's it. Now, the beauty of this approach is also that every single line item you can format in any way you like. So you see, it's a very flexible approach and lets you customize your financial statement in any way you like. Now, it's not the only approach that you can take, and a different approach I will show you in one of the next videos. So if you want to stay up to date and want to be informed when I upload that one, just make sure that you subscribe. And if you feel that all of these DAX formulas are a little bit overwhelming, then check out this video over here. That will make it a lot easier for you. Now, I hope that you liked the video, and if you have any questions, just post them in the comment section below, and I hope to see you in the next video.